Hey everyone, can you hear me? Wonderful. Melinda, how many times have you probably heard it? That, my gosh, these people get paid a fortune, they hardly ever work, they get all the adulation. You're probably fed up of hearing how many times people think that this is the way that you live your lives. I want you to share a moment, like maybe a day out of your life, in terms of what you actually really do for a living.
That's a very fair question. I get that a lot. Just to break a few of those misconceptions, I'd be in the makeup chair by 6:30, and I would have memorized 20 pages the night before. And sometimes you get there and they give you a brand new script and say, sorry that you had to memorize all night. We scrapped it all, and you have 5 minutes to now learn this. So your brain goes into crap mode, and you just have to forget everything that you learned, and you're put on the pressure, you're put on the spot to perform and memorize, because if you don't get your lines out verbatim, it's up to you to kind of do that. No one else can take your spot. So what they would do to any normal 16-year-old is hand you a coffee with tea bags in it so that you would have a lot of energy. I say that that is what stunted my growth. So I'm gonna keep going with that one. And you would just have to be on and bring that energy, and then periodically throughout the day they'd hand you Red Bulls so that you can keep your high energy up and do it all again the next day. And I remember doing that for 6 months straight when I was younger, to the point where I missed an entire winter and daylight because I'd get picked up before the sun rose, and then, it was already dark by the time I got home. And I remember being pushed so hard that I fainted on set one day, and that was when they were like, oh, we should probably give her a break. So that was my first time having 3 days off, because I think they had to with their insurance, because I was fainting. And then I have people being like, so that's so easy, right? It's fun what you do? And I was like, yeah, it is. It definitely has pros and cons like everything, but that is why I created the Misconception Society, to break these misconceptions that people have. And they're fair. They're fair assumptions if you simply don't know what our day-to-day life consists of. And I have a black belt. I've studied martial arts since I was 3 years old. And the misconceptions around that are that females aren't strong, women aren't powerful, you can't fight boys. I've beat up a few boys in my day. So yeah, I'm here to spread, break misconceptions and share a little bit about my journey, and hopefully just give the real perspective and what it actually is like in the film world.
I really love that you started the Misconception Society. I think it's a great concept. You're also a spirit healer as well. I want to talk a little bit about what all of that really means. I know that, because you came, into the industry very, very young, that there are probably, a lot of difficult, dynamics to balance school life, home life, and then this crazy schedule that you were just talking about. At that young age, how did you kind of make all of that, work for you? Because I can tell you that as a grown-up, which is like in her, plus mid-40s, I'm still trying to figure that shit out. How are you making it work? And at that age?
I think everyone expected me to turn out to be the child statistic that had addictions and went crazy, just because I had to move out of my family home at 16. I was born in Ottawa. My family lived there. And I was just a normal kid in grade 10, going to class every day, coming home, going to ballet, karate, doing homework, doing it all over again. But I always was in the industry where if I had an audition, my dad would take the day off of work. We owned a family karate school, so he would just get another instructor in and drive me 5 hours for my 5-minute audition and drive me back. So they always knew that my priority was to be an actress, and I didn't ever want to lose sight of that. My first job ever was in LA at 14, and it kind of set the bar. I was like, I'd come home and I'd live my life again, and it was great, and I loved it, but I also had tastes throughout of what it was like, of what I could have. So I did my Degrassi audition. I thought that would be the most of it, and it was my favorite show that I used to watch, and the only show I really watched. And then it went my way, by the grace of God. And then the next week I moved to Toronto and started working full time. And it just happened so quickly, and it just happened it was so time consuming that I didn't have a social life. We legally had to do 2 hours of tutoring on set each day, but I didn't have the normal high school experience, nor the time to even have friends. I moved to Toronto, and I remember learning how to use the subway because I thought that was, my independence. And I would go to the Eaton Center, and I would just people watch, and I would just stare, and that was how I got my social interaction. It sounds sad, but I made friends later on, I promise. But I would just stare at people, and I would, learn all these makeup tips and tricks from set, and I would see how they would have a character, and they would break it down from our nail color down to the hair to the shoes, of what the character would be wearing to match their psyche and their personality. So I would start to observe different people and their habits and mannerisms and how it corresponded and translated to their fashion and then to their self-esteem. And I realized that, when they would dress me up in these, my character on Degrassi was a little floozy sometimes, so she'd have big heels and little mini skirts, and I would, sit like this, and then I'd get to How to Be Indie, where I played a kid, even though I was 17 to 20 when I wrapped it. And, they'd put me in Converse and flat shoes and pigtails, and you can't help but feel like younger. And then I realized how, what I looked like represented and altered how I felt and how I behaved and acted, and I thought the psychology behind it all was so interesting. The look good, feel good mentality. And I thought if I could kind of put this into a program and give it to kids, and it's something that I honestly wish I had. So that's why I created the Misconception Society, to break beauty misconceptions, fitness misconceptions, industry misconceptions. And now I do workshops with kids, I do chats. Just yesterday, it was the cutest thing ever. I taught this Martial Arts for Justice event where I have this workout called the Girly Ninja because it's my weirdo mix of ballet and karate. And I taught it to this class of like 30 kids under the age of 7 in Woodbine Mall yesterday, and they were breaking their boards, and I got them to write their misconception on the board, so they got to physically break it and feel empowered, and they were just so cute, and it was a fundraiser, and the money goes towards, similar to the charity that we just heard of, sex trafficking and child slavery in Bolivia. So these are women and kids that don't have the voices or the power to advocate for themselves. So we do these fundraisers and send the money that way. And if my film schedule allows, I'll be teaching the programs in Rwanda and Uganda this coming fall. So.
Wow, that's incredible. Really is. That's a round of applause, folks, definitely. So I want to ask you something, Melinda. Your focus is very much the teenage and the younger children. Why? What have you seen that perhaps we may have not seen? And you know what I'm alluding to. We've seen it, with a lot of the Disney stars. And you also mentioned it slightly without going into detail. There's just this crazy access that you have when you're privileged, right? It's not something you fell into, and you've mentioned why, because you had a lot of discipline and your crazy schedule. But, a lot of these people also have crazy schedules, but they find other ways that perhaps are not healthy to be able to deal with just the craziness of their schedule. Why do you think that you never fell into that? Because, I know that misconception came from that place of what you've seen.
Truth be told, I have older sisters that would have popped that ego bubble way before it ever started. But I understood that I've always ever wanted to be an actress. My grandmother was an actress in Guyana, and my great-grandfather founded one of the first theater production companies. So I kind of grew up hearing about these stories of my grandmother dressed in goddess attire, and they would go and they would share the religious stories, but in theater form, and they would, back in the day when marketing consisted of holding a sign going through South America saying, we'll perform there tonight at this time. And I just thought the fact that they were using their influence and artistic energy just to share a good message, I thought I was always proud of hearing my grandmother's stories, so I wanted to kind of share the same. I knew that being raised in the public eye meant that I have following, and I knew that I could have I have a message to share, and it can either be a negative one or a positive one, and I feel like sometimes part of the reason where I got this opportunity out of the blue at a young age was maybe to learn it firsthand. And, you know, yes, I wish I would have had some training before being thrown onto the country's biggest show, but I think having to hit those issues firsthand was how I'm able to give an authentic explanation from a green perspective into now I guess a professional perspective.
That's wonderful. So you have a certain statement about the misconception recipe, and I want to read that off. 3 words: perseverance, passion, and plan. Tell me why.
I think that everybody can be and have and do exactly what it is they really want to do. So when I have, you know, a room like this of maybe 100 kids and they all want to be different things, I can't give them an actor's perspective and say, well, this is how to be an actor, because that's what I am. But I think if I can boil it down to the common denominator of what it would be to be successful in whatever field you would like, it is exactly that. If you're passionate about something, I believe that not everyone's born with certain talents. I still take private acting training twice a week, and every audition I have, I still train very hard, because I don't think that you can ever have enough knowledge. And the day I decide I'm done learning is a very sad day, because then, you know, your talent's capped. So I think that I might not be able to teach them how to, you know, get to their doctor goals or their lawyer goals or whatever it is, but if you're passionate about whatever it is that you want to do, and you persevere and you give all of your heart and you visualize it and you manifest it and you create a plan, a physical plan, every step that you take will either get you to your goal or deter you from your goal. So I think as long as I pose that question to them, does it get you towards your step or down the ladder, I think it's up to them to make that choice. Because when someone forces it down your throat, I mean, I'm the same way. I'd rebel as well, unless I decide that I want to win.
And you have decided that you want to win, and you have won. You've won on many levels, my darling, as an actress, you know, in this great initiative of yours. Just, you know, you've been like a ballet student for like the longest time as well, right? And it's just, and I noticed that the discipline in you, in who you are, I think has a lot to do with why you're such a all-round successful young lady.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit now about beauty and the entertainment business. What have you experienced as a woman of color, as a woman that, you know, always goes for, you know, roles where, you know, you always are expected to look a certain way? You've had 2 very, very opposing roles that we are very familiar with. You mentioned with Degrassi and with How to Be Indie. How have you kind of dealt with all of that pressure?
I think the number one most important thing, especially being in the TV and film world, is to know that when you are a part of a project, you're lending your face and your body and your time, this is how I think about it anyway, your time on the earth to this project. So I pick my projects very wisely, because I realize that I'm giving literally my face and my body and my energy and my time to it. So I think that I have certain criteria that now I've just grown to know, and that's the fine line between the misconceptions of actors being divas. You know, certain things like if I have gum in my mouth and I have to go off to the side to spit it out and the camera's already focused on me, it's easier for the makeup artist just to take the gum and throw it out for me, because then they have to reset the focus, I have to get back on my mark, someone has to readjust my hair, my clothes back to perfect, so it's easier. And I remember at first I'd be like, no, you're someone's mom, I'm not spitting my gum in your hand. And then they were like, no, we'll get in trouble if we don't. And I was like, to anyone else, this looks like a diva move. For me, this is what I have to do.